morning, everybody. Welcome to Deadwood. If this is your first time, we love having you guys here. I want to welcome everybody in the virtual community as well. There will be some time for Q&A at the end. We'll have about 10 minutes, so have your questions ready. And if you're listening virtually, you can drop your question in the Discord and we'll get you there. So I'm going to announce my good friend, James McQuiggan. James is a security awareness advocate. Is that the right title, James?
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah, it's close, right? For KnowBe4. Prior to that, he was in consulting. He's done incident response, ICS, a little bit of everything. So he's a great speaker. You're really going to enjoy this talk. I was looking at your title, James, and I thought, did he make it long just because he knew I was introducing him? AI agents in action, protecting against synthetic media and human risk exploits. Take it away.
Awesome. All right, anybody want to guess who that is? Yeah, I'm guessing by the smiles and the laughs. Yeah, we know who that is. Jensen Huang, right? Well, at the conference he had at the beginning. Okay, now that you're here, Jerry, I got to start over again. At a conference at the beginning of the year, one of the keynotes that he had, he made a particular quote that I thought was very interesting of where we're going to be here in 2025. And essentially, talking about AI agents and the fact that we are experiencing a technical shift and a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity for people. And I'm already seeing that, and we're probably already seeing that already in organizations, enterprises, influencers. I've seen more TikTok videos of people showing me how to use N8N and YouTube videos and buy my template pack. So it's certainly becoming a moneymaker for a lot of folks. From us as cybersecurity professionals, we have to look at it a little differently. Great, this is a way for us to do more automation. We can leverage AI agents, maybe look at NHIs, non-human identities. How are we using it? How are the cybercriminals using it? The question then becomes, who's innovating faster? And we've known for years, and we've been doing this, I've got the gray hair, and I know some of you out there do too, that have been involved in working in cybersecurity since way back in the 90s, dealing with antivirus, viruses, malware, worms. You know, where we come out, we discover a new worm or a new virus gets out there in the wild, we update our patterns for antivirus, and the next week there's a new one that's out there. And it's been that cat and mouse game. So now we start dealing with Agentic AI or AI agents. We know that the cybercriminals are leveraging it, nation states, they're doing it themselves as well. So we have to figure out who's innovating faster, are we going to be able to keep up, and so forth. All right, so as Kathy mentioned, great little introduction, I'm James McQuiggan, CISO advisor over at KnowBe4. I also teach cyber threat intelligence at Full Sail University in Central Florida. And I'm the host of a podcast called Simply Secured, which you can find it on the Simply Cyber Media Group YouTube channel. New shows come out every Friday. So there's my shameless plug for my podcast. Enough about me, we'll move on. So working for KnowBe4, we're focused on the human, we're focused on human risk management, doing that in a variety of different ways, anti-phishing, real-time coaching, compliance training, and now with AI agents. So there's my KnowBe4 marketing slide, now I can move on. So essentially what my day job is to go around and talk with people about the importance of securing their dried grapes. Yeah, it's raising security awareness. And I got, yeah, thanks. All right, so Kathy said I had a sense of humor. She didn't say it was any good. Oh wait, no, that was my friend Eric, never mind. So what I'm curious is I get into, as we start talking about AI agents and AI and everything else, I'm curious where everybody is so I can get a good gauge of the audience here. So who's just kind of learning and starting when it comes to Agentic AI? Okay, about a third of it, cool, good. How many are running your own Agentic AI platform? You got an MCP server running at 8N? Handful, a few, okay. What's Agentic AI? Okay, appreciate it, those being honest. All right, so let's talk about Agentic AI, but as a university professor, one of my, I'll say bad habits is I don't know everybody's level of experience, how much you know, so we'll do a little bit of history. We'll kind of talk about how we got here and why Agentic AI is the way it is. So that'll be about 40 minutes of the presentation. No, I'm kidding. So, the law of accelerating return. The next decade won't bring 10 years of progress. It's going to bring 100 years of progress at today's rate. From Ray Kurzweil. Essentially, when we look at where AI was, generative AI, in November of 2022, we're starting to mess around with GPTs, generative pre-trained transformers, ChatGPT, and so forth. And it's just kind of exploded over the years. Last November, I started hearing about Agentic AI and started playing around with it. And essentially, what's gone on in the last 10 months with regards to Agentic AI, there's been a lot of changes and a lot of quick changes with regards to it. Things we're discovering with security, things we're discovering with vulnerabilities, and so forth. And essentially, when we look at Ray Kurzweil's, curve, we're sitting down here 2025, the trend where the computing power is already at one human brain, all human brains by 2050. We're talking about AGI. There's people saying that that's going to be sooner, but we'll see. But essentially, Agentic AI is moving at a very rapid pace, a lot faster than other technologies that we've been dealing with. When we think about virtualization, we think about, the Gordon Moore's law of every 18 months, technology doubles. Well, now we're seeing generative AI doubling every 7 months. And we've seen studies of that already coming out. That's got Sonnet 3.7. We know we're already on 4 or 4.5 now. But we know that AI is being able to help us accelerate our technology advancements and everything else. This is out on the MITRE blog, MITRE.org blog. So essentially, the way I look at what Agentic AI is doing to AI is what social media did for the internet years ago. You think about how, in the early 2000s, our parents were starting to get on the computers, or at least I remember mine were, and more people started getting on. But once social media came on the scenes and we had MySpace. Anybody still got a MySpace page? No. We had MySpace, but Facebook exploded that. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter back then. That kind of revolutionized and changed the landscape when it came to the internet through social media. And we're seeing that now with Agentic AI through the different tools that are available, how easy it is to be able to create them, and adding into that with vibe coding as well. So, what are agents? When we talk about Agentic AI, what are we talking about? When we think of agents, this is who I think of. With a name like James, you got to go with James Bond. James Bond, yeah, okay, all right. Some people may or may not remember James or too aware. So we got Ethan Hunt, we got Jason Bourne, and then of course we got Black Widow. But essentially, agent is the base of the word comes from Latin agere, which is along the lines of meaning to do or act. So it's doing an act for us or an action. So as we look at AI agents, we know we deal with basic automation, rule-based, and AI agents. So to give an easy example, basic automation is kind of like an if this, then that. Every day at sunset, turn on the lights. Every day at sunset, write a social media post about AI agents and human risk management. But then every day at sunset, write a recap email on the cyber stories. So this is just doing an action with a large language model. That's actually going through, analyzing all of my email, then using a large language model to be able to generate an email. So it kind of takes up the complexity one step more. There's a book out there that I read a number of months ago, really great book, I'll show it to you here in just a sec, that dealt with Agentic AI, and basically a process that you want to go through when you're coming up with whatever you want your agents to do or how it's going to work. You've got your sense, so gathering your data from multiple sources. This is similar to what we've done in software development lifecycle or other projects as well. We have the plan and reason stage where we're doing maybe some reasoning, coming up with the step-by-step plans to achieve whatever goal it is that we want to do with it, prioritize those actions, coordinate resources. Then it acts on a particular function, whether it's leveraging large language model, it's going through that reasoning. It might have a reflex stage before it eventually spits out what your output is or what you're looking to do. when we look at AI agents, we look at a market map, and these are always fun to show, and we always see them in presentations, but this was December of 2023, so not even 2 years ago. These were pretty well the tools that we would find out there. Fast forward about a year. Fast forward to earlier this year.
Yes.
So you've got more and more companies. I said at the beginning, and Jensen said it as well. Multi-trillion-dollar enterprise. Everybody is jumping on we'll say the AI agent bandwagon to go through and be able to create their tools to help, in where it's going to be through content creation, marketing, data analysis, and so forth. So there's more and more of these agents are coming on board. Now, out of the Agentic AI book, that's it up in the left-hand corner, Pascal Bornet is the author of it, but he came out with kind of a progression framework of where AI agents are. So similar to what I mentioned before, your level 1 is your rule-based, if this, then that, kind of like Zapier. Level 2, you're adding in some basic AI or machine learning, kind of like TensorFlow or PyTorch. Level 3, we get into our chatbots, AutoGPT, N8N. Now we're getting into the agentic, and this is where a lot of folks are playing right now. Level 4, semi-autonomous, multimodal perception, kind of like the Tesla cars or Weibo, leveraging different sensors, looking at how the traffic is, what's in the way, making decisions, and so forth. Level 5, Skynet, so full autonomous, full awareness, advanced reasoning, AGI, advanced artificial general intelligence. So we know that there's very rare of these right now. We're seeing more and more of these coming about. Sorry, can I touch? Okay. So we're starting to see, these looking at where we are with our progression. Like I said, a lot of folks are here, and we're getting some that are here. But from the agentic standpoint, we see a lot of level 3 type systems be created. So what are some of the tools that are out there that we can use? And some of you may be familiar and use them. N8N, Hey Boss, Make, FlowEyes. AutoGPT, you can actually run locally, same with N8N. I know myself, my colleague Eric, we're both running N8N on our local machines, and it's easy to download, get it installed, and then there are thousands of different templates that are out there you can download and configure to use that do a variety of different tasks. One that I'm working on now goes out and gets the different stories through RSS feeds, analyzes it, figures out which are the top stories, and then generates a report for me so that I can use that in social media. Vibe coding is kind of another way that we're seeing as agentic, but an easy way to be able to create applications, be able to complete tasks. So I'm not going to read the prompt, but this is kind of the length of the prompt that I gave in Hey Boss, where I wanted it to analyze RSS feed information, and it was able to generate and spit out a web application for me. And essentially what it does, goes out, I'm able to load up a RSS feed of feeds that I want to use. Then it analyzes whatever the top feeds are, the most common ones, and then it gives me it in this display feed. From there, I'm able to generate a post. There's a little share button that I had configured in it, so that when it pops up, it gives me an option to generate a post or a encouraging post or thought leadership type post that I can then use on LinkedIn based off the story. So if the story, in this case, we're looking at FBI takes down breach form, portal used for Salesforce extortion. It could be a story for LinkedIn where I'm providing thought leadership on it, relating to the fact that you've got organizations working together to take down these portals because the Salesforce extortion was focusing on XYZ, on the agents that they had. But this was something to help me be more efficient by having a tool that's very proficient to going through, rather than having me to sort through my RSS feeds, figure out which one. This basically coughs it all up for me. Now, courtesy of Eric Krohn, my good buddy, he developed a little N8N1, and I told him I was going to steal this because I haven't got mine working yet. But essentially what his does is we're both one of those people that we write comment ops, we appear in media, and so when you do a Google search on our name, we both get Google alerts based on our name. So he takes his Google alert, filters off the name of the different articles where his name is featured. He then pulls the articles flags the email so that way when he does the process again, it basically says this one's already been read, and then he dumps it into a spreadsheet. So now, when it comes to the end of the quarter and he's got to show how much work he's done, he's got a spreadsheet ready to go. So that helps Eric be a little more efficient in the sense that now he's not like us or me and our other CISO advisors that are going through and going, all right, how many articles did I write? Which ones were I in? Eric's just got his spreadsheet ready to go. So being able to leverage the N8N framework is just one that's out there, whether you do it with vibe coding, but thinking about where you can help with automation, what tools, what is it you have that are a repeatable process that allows you to be able to go through and create these using this kind of environment. One of the other fun things is all the little red squares are kind of where some vulnerabilities could be. You're dealing with interactions to Gmail, an AI agent, all of which are dealing with APIs. And so now we have to start looking at, with these essentially MCP servers, we're dealing with APIs that are out there that could be leveraged, and we need to make sure that we're securing those. But as we start looking at non-human identities, these are the AI agents that are going out and performing the tasks for us, whether in an IT environment, cybersecurity, or whatever tasks. Now, essentially, we've got these non-human identities that have accounts that are accessing multiple systems at a time. And it's being widely adopted. We've got financial companies, we've got Walmart, but starting to leverage these AI agents to handle a lot of the automated work that they can do. We've also seen Taco Bell and McDonald's starting to leverage AI. One of the popular places has been in the drive-through. But that caused a little bit of a problem because, where'd it go? Did I put it in there? When you had a man order 18,000 waters. They didn't quite have that in the thought process of ridiculous orders. It said, okay, 18,000 waters. And so, but then McDonald's, and not picking on fast food at all, but these were the stories that I came across, but their hiring bot ended up exposing millions of records. So now we're starting to see some of the security vulnerabilities and issues from using these. It's great that they're out there and they're doing a lot of great work for us, but if we're not going through and securing it, like we've been trying to do for years with all other kinds of technologies, that's what we're going to be running into and will continue for the next while. So the NHIs allows us to be more efficient, allows us to scale them up. I say security and compliance is in here, allows us to improve security through monitoring and response, but if we're not securing those NHIs, that's going to it's going to generate a lot of problems. And then cost savings. Now, of course, a lot of the time people are worried, well, great, there goes my job. For me, when I look at this, is like there's an opportunity for us to be able to level up those employees, those users, away from just doing these one tasks. Or they need to be the human in the loop. So that 18,000 waters that comes into Taco Bell, there should have been somebody there that goes, okay, approve, and not just trigger it off. Well, we can see that we can leverage NHI in a variety within the ecosystem, but looking back, the service accounts, IoT devices, cloud, AI agents, and then we have our NHIs, but being able to leverage all of these collaboratively working together allows us for, again, greater scale and to be more efficient with the tools overall. So some of the challenges, the proliferation of these NHIs, getting them out there, the security risks that we're already seeing already and continue, and wanting to get more human in the loop oversight, especially, and these are going to come from the use cases, the things that we're seeing out in the industry. But us as security professionals, being able to look at it going, we're giving this autonomous device access to all of these accounts, all of these databases, that can present a bit of a problem. We need to make sure that we've got some sort of check in there overall. Now, we're dealing with all of these computers, but has anybody ever wondered what kind of music a computer likes to listen to? Well, that would be an algorithm. Okay. So this kind of gets everybody engaged again, but what's your biggest concern about deploying these defense agents, these autonomous agents? Anybody? Matt in the back. Hallucinations. Is that Matt? I think it is, yeah. Any other concerns with regards to autonomous agents? Data leaks. System response? Oh, inconsistent response. See, yeah.
Over-reliance by the engineers.
Over-reliance by engineers?
Not able to, giving up human thinking.
Giving up human thinking?
Not able to take all the context in and apply human intuition and could miss something.
Human intuition, right. You bring in all the information, it just processes it based off of what it's been trained on through the models, and not having that human intuition. Right. So we're going to be concerned about it. Now we're dealing with two different new protocols that have come on the scene within the last year. And of course, we're talking about A2A and MCP, and we know MCP has got a little more issues. The funny thing is when I came up with the idea for this presentation, it was 6 months ago. And I delivered similar variations. I delivered this presentation locally in Orlando. And even then, I've had to update the slide deck because how quick things are changing. But originally, A2A and MCP were thinking it was going to be a protocol war, kind of like Coke and Pepsi. But essentially, now we're starting to leverage the capabilities of A2A as well as MCP. And there's a difference. Your AI agent for MCP is going to interface through API to databases, other files, other systems, whereas your A2A is essentially communicating between agents overall. So when we look at the A2A protocol real quick, Google's the ones that are behind the A2A agents, but essentially you've got multiple agents communicating to each other, sharing information, so you could have one agent doing one task, one agent doing another, third, and so forth, and then all of them collaborating, whether through doing task management, negotiation with the user interface, discovery, but whatever the tasks are overall. Real quick, they've got a lot of people on board working with them, so that kind of helps the progress. But when we break it down and we look at the pros and cons, you've got your multi-agent collaboration. It's a decentralized security, so everyone is securing themselves. It gives you the ability to be a lot more flexible and scalable. The con, of course, from decentralized, less centralized control, so you're relying on each one. There is a bit more complexity in the management, and there is the possibility of increased latency within that communication happening overall. That's on A2A. Like any good cybersecurity professional, we're going to look at threat modeling. We got a new technology. Let's figure out what are the vulnerabilities. How do we attack it? So we can look at the collaboration protocols. We can look at exploiting those, maybe even through malware, bots, phishing, prompt injection attacks, what we've seen already. An agent impersonation versus the A2A protocol, because of the token that they share, you might be able to man in the middle of the attack on that one and be able to bypass it. But whenever we're working with any of these, of course, with any of our agents, we want to make sure we're going through and conducting some type of threat modeling so that we can help that with an audit or whatever else that we got going on. So when we look at the MCP protocol, essentially you've got large language models providing the generation, but then it's connecting through APIs. Could be your email, GitHub, servers, databases, any other type of technology that were out there, that MCP server. And there's now thousands and thousands of these being created all the time. Pretty well everyone's turning around. OpenAI, ChatGPT just came out with theirs. Anthropic has had theirs as well. So the MCP protocol is becoming kind of that gateway for a lot of folks to be able to connect a large language model, getting it processing and connecting with all of their other technology, that non-human identity. So we look at a market map. This was from earlier this year. This was back from March and June, but the first one was March, this one's June. So this continues to grow overall. Now, I did pros and cons. This is an older slide from, I think, June of this year when I did this. And I already know, now we know we're dealing with a lot more security issues. But one of the good things is you've got standard integration. There's a dynamic security, and does reduce the overhead, development overhead, because you're able to literally drag and drop your icons and then enter in the information. It makes it very easy if you're using something like N8N to be able to configure you're utilizing APIs. The initial setup can be a bit complex. I'm struggling with some of the capabilities in N8N myself, over-permissioning risks, and then, of course, vulnerable to injection. The over-permission risks we're seeing because there's not enough permissions. We're plugging in APIs, and it's connecting to all kinds of things. And so we're going to look at ways that we can secure these. We look at the threat modeling, system compromise, supply chain, tool shadowing, sensitive data, and cross-site request forgery. Things that we've already been dealing with other applications, other technologies. Again, going through and threat modeling it, figuring out ways that we can be able to break it. Jerry, what's your favorite browser?
Chrome.
You like Chrome, cool. Got a favorite browser? Edge, cool. Brave, all right. Well, I don't know if you know, but they all went shopping. Problem is, they didn't buy anything. It's because they're all browsers. That fuels me up. All right. So now I've kind of thrown out, we've talked about MCP, A to A, Agentic AI, it's out there. How do we now protect it? But we're also going to look at some of the risks that we're dealing with it as well. So, question for all of you again. When do you believe Agentic AI attacks will become your primary threat attack vector? Is that next year?
No.
2 years from now? 2030? Or when? I'm sorry, what did you say?
Now.
Now, already here. Yesterday, right. This worked great earlier this year when we were just learning about it. Now it's like, yeah, we know it's here already. So, right, we're already dealing with it. We've already seen it. McDonald's, Taco Bell, plus other different attacks that have come out with regards to it. We've also seen it with Claude Code. 17 different organizations breached, leveraging Claude Code, doing Agentic AI from inside there. We've got prompt lock that's come out, which back ends with GPT OSS 20B. So we know that cybercriminals are leveraging this for code generation, for phishing, social engineering as well. So we know it's already there. So yes, it's already here. When we look at the AI breaches, this came out of just a couple of months ago with the data breach report. 97% of breaches had some type of AI or dealt with some sort of AI functionality. 13% of them actually had their AI systems breached themselves. 8%, the unknown, are people that aren't aware or weren't aware of the breach they had was a result of their AI. So it's here, and we're already dealing with it already. So what are the different attack vectors? Kind of covered them already with the threat vectors, but again, misuse of potential, the automation of attacks, we know that cybercriminals are leveraging those. Evasion techniques with polymorphic malware and email that's out there where they're changing to avoid the antivirus systems. And then agentic AI teams where you could, for years we've been battling with bots. Now we're going to start dealing with agentic AI bots, essentially, and them coming together and targeting us. But we know that we're already using AI in cybersecurity. We got threat monitoring, vulnerability management, we've got it in our security orchestration systems, predictive threat intelligence, SOC support. So we know we're already being able to leverage AI, but then how can we start leveraging agentic AI within these as well? So some use cases, some things to consider. Again, we're looking at automation, we're looking at scaling, doing autonomous threat hunting. Or if Wade Wells is watching, autonomous threating. If you know, you know, sorry. He hates the word threating as as when you ship threat hunting. But anyway, what's that?
Trunctioneer.
There you go. So being able to do threat hunting, but doing it leveraging AI agents within the organization, going out and getting the different threat intel reports, and then using that to discover within the organization. Maybe reducing false positives. Adaptive incident response, you being able to use agents to work with our playbooks, look at the tools, tactics, and procedures, maybe even preventing lateral movement, but being able to go through and again, being able to handle our incident response by leveraging agents. Predictive defense agents, if we know how our network's operating, and I know there are variations, especially with could be terabytes of logs that come in every day, but being able to look at our network, and if something goes outside of a normal scope, an increase in data that's being transferred out in the middle of the day or incoming, but having predictive analysis on our networks can go a long way and help us being able to protect those as well. Finally, of course, security orchestration, leveraging, there are products out there already leveraging AI, but being able to do that first level response using agentic AI as well. So these are just some case studies, not the be-all, end-all, but we know that these aren't future concepts. They're already delivering a return of investment for us, for organizations, makes our CISOs happy. But essentially, this, whatever we develop today for defense is getting used for offense, and most likely the reverse of that as well. So some mitigation tactics. Essentially, when it comes to agentic AI, when we're using MCP servers, we want to think about API security. We're already leveraging that, but we're not doing enough of it right now inside of the agentic systems because we're seeing the vulnerabilities. Implementing a robust authentication. We need more authentication with regards to the APIs, with regards to the agentic systems, because we're seeing a lot of them are being able to connect to multiple systems at once and not essentially, locking it down to one function. Doing security audits for my GRC friends out there. But essentially going through doing those audits, maybe even being able to leverage agentic AI to go through to do the initial review, but going through and having audits of those agent systems, restricting their permissions, limiting what they can access. Because when you've got a system that's out there and it was in the news a couple months ago where they used an agentic AI system to optimize their database system. And it decided, okay, well, we'll optimize it, and it deleted the whole thing. It optimized it, it reduced it down to simple capabilities, but restricting the permissions of it to be able to delete, And then finally, sanitizing inputs with regards to the data that's coming in for the large language model function capability. So if we have these non-human identities, having a zero trust approach. Again, we're looking at applying current principles that we're already doing, but they're not getting applied within the agentic AI. So we want to have a zero trust approach. Provide short-lived credentials. Human risk management, training the teams that are doing the development, your users as well. I work at KnowBe4. It's all about the training. But training them on NHI management, because essentially what NHI management will be a strong function of your IT teams. They'll be the HR of your NHIs. And then, of course, compliance. So either compliance to your own policies in your organization, or it could be to a industry standard or a country region standard as well. So when we talk about MCP, and this comes out of an article that I was reading just the other day, again, it's going back to thinking API technology, thinking about what we're doing with agentic, but leveraging the latest authentication methods, whether it's OAuth 2, whatever it may be, but having authentication capabilities on the servers. Doing threat monitoring, red teaming allows us to do MCP audits, going through and identifying, making sure there's no vulnerabilities, red teaming those MCP servers, those agents, because that is becoming the #1 way that folks are getting in. Having defense in depth. We've been doing it, we've been saying it for years, but it's not being shown on these systems. Limit the plugin essentials. We're seeing now with the MCP servers, you can have it's kind of like our browser years ago. When the browsers started first having extensions and the toolbars, there's the meme out there where it's the browser and 90% of the screen are all the toolbars. Same thing with the MCP. We don't want to be overloading it with a variety of dozens of extensions. Limit the agents to maybe 3 to 5 different plugins that we would use. And of course, AI security, having not artificial intelligence security, but security of the AI, of the agentic AI as well, but implementing and providing all of these security concepts that we've been using already within the agentic AI platform. Any programmers in the room? Cool. Anybody know how many programmers it takes to screw in a light bulb? That would be none. It's a hardware problem. I'll pay you later. If you've got a jack-o'-lantern at home and it's got a vulnerability into it, how do you fix it? You apply the pumpkin patch. All right, getting it, yeah.
I thought he was done.
He never goes back to back, man.
So I've got some final words that I'm going to do. What I want to do is kind of take the 10 minutes now. If you've got any questions or any comments that you'd like to ask. Yes, sir. Speak up nice and loud for me.
Yeah, are there any solutions out there that are like, that run independently but monitor the MCP agents like EDR over there on our servers?
Are there services out there that monitor the MCP servers? Is that?
No, like, are there, like, that specifically, like, designed for monitoring Agentic AI and MCP servers, like EDR servers?
Oh, so you're talking about like other EDRs for MCP servers?
Right, they're run in isolation, not like tied into the AI itself.
So it's an isolated EDR for the MCP server?
Right.
Okay. Are there any?
Yeah, are there any services like that?
That's a good question. Matt, do you have an answer? It's always good to have people. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So go check with Matt afterward with regards to EDR potential solutions for MCP servers. Yes. Yeah.
So do you think, I know you call them NHIs, I think I've heard them called like AI identities.
AI identities. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So for those identities, is the same approach as we use to user identities and like computer accounts,
Right.
is the same approach going to work for those type of identities, or do we need to adapt and change as far as like looking at them and how they're accessing things?
So the question is with regards to the NHIs or AI identities, should we be applying the same type of rules and concepts of our user authentication authorization with them? For me, I look at it and go, yes. When you're trying, because right now, even setting up something in N8N, it's limiting, you're giving it an API and it's got full control to go access whatever, Google, ChatGPT, or email, or whatever it is. And there needs to be more control in there for those user permissions. But yeah, having that same mentality of it being a user, yeah, you want to implement those same security policies, protocols, almost different policy in your organization for your AI identities or NHIs. But yeah, yeah. Cool. Yes, Becky.
James, so the question I've got deals with defense in depth generally.
Yep.
More specifically, you've got a situation with like customer service, and the use case that I'm aware of and I'm trying to deal with is when we give agents, like actual human customer agents, access to all this like customer PII and information folders so that they can have their real-time chats, be more informed, have more. But how do you deal with defense in depth when you've got situations where there's agents involved and then it like explodes the attack surface?
So the question deals with when you've got these agents, like within customer service or whatever, how do you implement a defense in depth strategy for those? So when you've got your agents, if you've got like MCP, you're connecting those to either an application that's then got the knowledge base. You'd have another one that's got the large language model. Those are the chatbots, the level 3 in that progression chart. When we're talking about defense in depth, we're talking about, isolating maybe the large language model. It could be isolating then further the knowledge base information, because your knowledge base is pretty well going to be open for everybody, because it's going to be, could be for internal use, it could be for external use. Your large language model system, you want to isolate that to only that communication from the chatbot to limit any exposure to other systems. That's kind of the start of how that defense in depth would start. If you're going to have administrative access, you'd limit the access that way as well, just like any other sensitive golden nugget crown jewel system.
I have a question no one else does.
Yeah.
You talk about the steps to sort of monitor and secure these things, but what's some like baby steps for monitoring sanitized inputs for someone that might be attacked from like a SOC perspective?
So the question is, how do you as a baby step, how do you sanitize the inputs?
More so, how are you monitoring?
Oh, how do you monitor?
People that might be trying to abuse?
Oh, okay. So how do you monitor, go through the inputs that you're getting on those large language, like the 180,000 or the 18,000 cups of water. For me, I'd be looking at it as, there'd be a human in the loop with regards to that. You might have other services or tools that are monitoring or looking at those inputs, and then making a determination of whether you need to bring in a human or it moves forward and carry on with it. With the market map that I showed, I have no doubt that there's some services that are going to be in there that look at, prompt injection and looking at sanitizing those inputs. So to answer your question, essentially it's probably a third-party service. I'm not sure of anything right now on the current tools, but I'm sure there's somebody that's out there already. So, a good question. Yeah.
So, in regards to the API, is there a way to you can drop your agentic API into like an Akamai bot manager, manage out of a bot manager?
So using a third party like Akamai Bot Manager to secure and protect your APIs?
Yeah. Is that a thing yet?
No, but if you give it 10 more seconds, I'm sure somebody's probably come up with it. You bring up a great idea and concept. Maybe Akamai might be working towards that, because we're starting to see that the APIs are getting leveraged more, that we need to be able to secure and protect them further. So possibly, I can't say yes or no, but right. I think we're going to start kind of like what we've seen with password vaults or, CyberArk, I think, does it, but basically it's an isolated, secured environment with all the passwords. You go in with a token. That may be that next level, or things that we can start doing with these agentic AI. That's kind of that next level, because right now everybody's just trying to get to market, get it out there. We'll think about security later on. That's what's going to come around. Again, it's the rinse, lather, repeat that we've dealt with all the other years with technology. Any other questions? Go on, Luke.
What's the learning curve for like N8N or other automation?
If my friend Eric can figure it out, we can all figure it out. No. Oh, relax. So for me, I'm learning vibe coding. When I used MakeBoss, it was a matter of just dropping in a prompt and then going and figuring out the nuances there. With N8N, I went out and found a template and dropped it in, imported it as a JSON file. What I'm struggling with are the API keys of some of the things and some of the interpretive stuff. But watching a couple of YouTube videos and you're off and running. The learning curve is not very steep. Yeah, thanks. But if you can, and in conversations that I've had with other security folks, other folks like-minded, it's a time thing right now. They want to sit down, and we have the mindset to be able to sit down and do it. It's just going to take, I have a feeling after Christmas, we're going to have a lot more people doing agentic AI, because they'll take that Christmas break to do stuff. Last question. No? You good?
Slides.
Huh?
Can we get the slides?
Yes, I'm going to show you that in just a second.
Everything.
Yep.
Yeah, just so as far as the NCP servers, I don't know how those are being secured in any way.
Right.
You know how like supply chain attacks, like importing, NPM,
Yep.
is that something we have to worry about with them?
Supply chain is a concern with it, just because of all the different, when you look at things like N8N and its JSON formats and all the different agentic tools that are out there in the code, importing those into your environment, if we're not going through and vetting it and checking it, then yeah, we're going to be just as exposed as the issues we've been dealing with NPM, as well as what we have with GitHub. Malicious code could be inserted, not being aware, and so forth. So supply chain is a big concern with that as well, being able to go through and vet it. All right, so just some final words real quick. Like I said, at the beginning of the year, I put this together. I didn't really change it because it's interesting, because we really haven't had protocol wars. We're dealing more with MCP security issues. But looking at, MCP standard with no security, sadly. The tools, vibe coding, agentic software, it's growing, more and more coming along overall. We need to build our internal policies within our organizations with developers, especially for leveraging agentic AI. There's a lot of different open source tools that are out there, like N8N, Crew AI, AutoGen, AutoGPT. There's a plethora of them that are out there. So as I wrap up, my call to action for everybody, Governance. We want to make sure we've got, AI agent audits. If we're leveraging AI agents or we're building them or using them, we want to make sure we've got that policy, that governance overall. I have data CIA. It's the same concepts with regards to the agents as with any of our other data. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Securing it, making sure the data is staying the same, and we're securing it. MCP security, as I covered earlier, policies, and of course training and awareness, making sure we're educating our developers, making sure they have that understanding with regards to how they got to secure their agents overall. Anybody in here work for Microsoft? Anybody know anybody that works at Microsoft? Okay, cool. Anybody know why Microsoft employees are always so anxious? They're on edge. Anybody know what you call a computer that sings? A Dell. Finally, yes, I do have a way of keeping track of all my dad jokes. They're in my database. So I want to thank you all for your attention today. If you would like a copy of the presentation, I have one favor to ask all of you. Yes, it's a QR code, but here's the link. What it does is it takes you to a quick little survey for me that allows me to continue to be a better speaker, grow, change, and improve, but also you can download the presentation. So once you get through answering the questions, it's real quick and easy. It's all emojis, so it's all a lot of fun. You can find me out at jamesmcquiggan.com. I do have at the back of this deck, the last slide in this, I'll leave it up, but the last slide in the presentation are a variety of different resources and agent directories that you can download Agentic AI. Yes, sir?
What year was that photo?
Why? Damn. That was okay. Transparency. 10 years ago. 10. No, that was 20. No, it's not. That was 2016. And I did have somebody that I work with, a coach that I'm working with. She told me, she goes, "It's about time for a new headshot." I'm like, I haven't changed a bit. Well, thank you very much. Now I know. Now I'm calling up my photographer next week. I need new headshots. Cool. All right, well, I'll give you 3 minutes back. Thanks, everybody.